My first job out of college was as a corporate industrial engineer for Thomasville Furniture in Thomasville, North Carolina. My first assignment was to support the veneering operations. Now, an early lesson that I learned was don't overlook the obvious, and when you have a critical question, make a call. Now, veneer patterns on furniture are made with thin slices of wood that are pieced together and then taped, and then adhered to a substrate and pressed together. Following the pressing, the surface of the veneered face is sanded down to remove any image of the tape. The tape also serves the purpose to equalize the moisture between the slices of wood that are pieced together, because they have different moisture content sometimes, and the moisture in the tape kind of equalizes and travels into those veneered pieces of wood, making them act similarly when they're finished furniture. Now, an R&D team from Lancaster, Pennsylvania came down to visit us about 6 months into my career. They had been working on what they thought was a breakthrough in veneering adhesion for the past 18 months, but they hadn't contacted anybody about this project, so we were very curious to see what they had been working on, what this great breakthrough was. Well, as it turns out, they were trying to solve the problem of the requirement of taping veneered pieces together and then sanding the tape off. So they came up with this idea they called sonic adhesion. They basically could place the pieces of veneer together, and using this piece of equipment, it was sonically adhering the veneer to the substrate, requiring no tape at all. So they believed again that they would be reducing sanding and labor. After proudly demonstrating their new breakthrough idea, they asked if we had any questions. So our veneer buyer raised his hand and asked, "Well, this sounds great, but what do you do to equalize the moisture between the plies of veneer? Because after pressing, if that moisture hasn't been equalized, what will happen is the veneer itself will start buckling, and the furniture won't be acceptable and it won't be able to be sold. So how does sonic adhesion equalize that moisture?" Well, it turns out the team had never even considered that. They didn't know that. And the reason they didn't know that was because they never called anyone at Thomasville to ask them anything about veneering. So they never had reached out, and for 18 months of effort was a total waste, because this very basic principle of veneering had never been considered, never been thought of, and never been dealt with. Well, what could they do? The project was killed at that moment. They packed up, they went home, and we never heard from them again. So the lesson in all of this is never assume you know everything about a process you're dealing with. Take the time and the effort to communicate to those that do have some information and can give you some insight. You'll never regret it, and you probably can save a ton of heartache. I hope this story provided you with some inspiration to revisit your own processes. I have a lot more I'd like to share. Head over to pi-partners.com to learn how I can help. And check back from time to time for more Kaizen stories.